first began attacking and burning down each other's temples, but later turned their attention to samurai and started attacking them. They were known to be fearless warriors who fought to the death with long spears called naginata and were also skilled with bows and swords. But besides making out with their acolytes and killing other Buddhists, by far the most insane thing some of these Japanese Buddhist monks did was a practice called Sokushin Butsu, where they tried to achieve a state of enlightenment by ritualistically mummifying themselves. Sokushin Butsu was a process of self-mummification that took years of intense preparation. The goal was to slowly go from living to not living and leave behind a corpse that didn't decay after you passed. If you were successful and your dead body wasn't being eaten by maggots and falling apart, you were considered to have reached enlightenment, and your mummy would be put on display as a new Buddha. The self-mummification process would begin with a special diet called mokujiki, which translates to tree eating. For 1,000 days, the monk would wander the forest eating a diet of pine needles, tree resin, and seeds. This would help him lose all the fat, muscle, and bacteria in his body to prepare for the next step. The monk would then stop eating food altogether and only drink tiny amounts of salted water for 100 days. The whole time would be spent in intense meditation. When the monk felt death was near, his disciples would lower him into a pine box placed 9 feet underground. They would insert a small bamboo airway and then bury him alive. In total darkness, the monk continued his meditation and would ring a bell at certain times throughout the day to signal he was still alive. When the ringing stopped, the monk's disciples would dig him up to check if he had indeed passed. The airway would be removed and the monk would be sealed again. After another 1,000 days had passed, the disciples would check on the monk one last time, and if his body was free of any signs of decay, he had achieved enlightenment, and he would then be put on display as a living, or I guess not so living, Buddha. There are still temples in northern Japan that display the mummified remains of successful monks today. Sokushin Butsu was made illegal in 1879, but one last monk named Wukai attempted it illegally in 1903. Unfortunately for him, maybe because they feared being associated with a crime, his disciples never did the final step of checking on him, so he was left underground for almost 60 years until he was discovered by researchers in 1961. To their shock, his body was perfectly mummified and well preserved, so I guess Wukai made it to enlightenment after all.